Here's something I'm sorting through right now. I know this may sound morbid, but I don't think it's unhealthy to have this conversation with you, even though you're like the entire world. Or am I just talking to a selfie screen? Whoever I'm talking to right now, I'm hearing my own words out loud, and it's helping me psychologically process through this. Because at each stage in our life, we sort through random things. A decade ago, I was sorting through how I felt about the death penalty. That was a big deal to me a decade ago, okay? And 3 years ago, I was obsessed about the conspiracy that perhaps 9/11, that the government was in on it. There was an inside job after I watched Loose Change on Netflix. I was sorting through all that, okay? I'm not sorting through that stuff, but what I am sorting through right now is, what if, in the tragic event, I became a widow in my late 30s, having 2 young kids. If I became a widow, would I remarry? And it's funny, so I'm already thinking about this, and then it's popping up. I'm hearing people talk about it in conversations on Netflix. Chonda Pierce, a Christian comedian, I started watching it, and it starts out like with her talking about how she became a widow in her 50s, and she never thought this would happen to her. And it's about her overcoming this, and like as she's going out doing her stand-up comedy, like connecting with other widows of all ages. And you see women in their 20s saying, I never thought it'd happen to me. And even on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld, also on Netflix, he was talking to George Stephanopoulos, how do you say that? His wife. And they were having this conversation that it's vain to think that your spouse wouldn't remarry if something happened to you, to think that you're that irreplaceable. But in reality, there's a good chance most people would. But I'm asking myself this question because I need to sort through this psychologically, because I will always be sorting through something. Again, just like a decade ago when I was sorting through how I felt about the death penalty, at the same time I was sorting through, if you could go back in time and kill baby Hitler, would you? I was going through, see, I'm way past all that now. But right now, I'm sorting through, would I remarry if tragically something happened to my wife? And I'm putting myself in that whirlwind of that situation. To be almost 37, to have 2 young kids, to truly love my wife, and to be completely confident that she was the right one for me to marry. And that's where I'm at. But in that situation, if she tragically lost her life, and in that moment I instantly became a widow and a single dad now of 2 kids. And to add confusion on it, my wife and I have a life insurance policy, which would basically mean our house would instantly be paid off. Not to mention, when we moved in 3 years ago, the value has risen dramatically. So basically, it'd be like gaining $350,000 by becoming a widow. So now suddenly, there's this money and a paid off house, but now the person that I love so much more than anyone else in my life is now gone. And I've still got our children to raise. I just think that I'm the kind of person I wouldn't remarry. I really think I would just remain single probably the rest of my life. I think for me, I would feel, if I tried to move on and marry someone else, it seems like anybody else would be a cheap substitute, a generic substitute for what I did have. I would imagine most people would move on. But I don't know, with all that I've accomplished in my life so far, I feel like, okay, I'm good. But you take my wife out of the situation, it would just totally recalibrate my life. I wouldn't be a married man anymore. I wouldn't be part of this nuclear family anymore. I would be now a single dad. My identity would be different. I'd be a widow. I'd have to psychologically go through that. I'm not saying I would never remarry, but it would not be something I would be thinking about. I would think for many, many, many years. It would still feel wrong, I think, for me to remarry. And I know even what Jesus said about marriage. He said that in heaven, that we're not going to be married to one another like we are now. We'll be more like the angels. So that's even weird for me to process too, that even if you lived your whole life with your love of your life, that your spouse, and you don't die until, let's say, your late 70s, your early 80s, and then you die of natural causes, whatever. Even then, the Christian teaches what Jesus himself said, is that you're not going to be married to them in heaven anyway. How weird is that? Like, that is something I struggle with too. I'm like, I give my whole life to this person and share my life with this person my whole life. In best case scenario, we live a long, healthy life. We die in our sleep. And then we get to heaven. I'm like, hey, I remember you. You know how we, spent our whole life together and loved each other more than anyone else. It's just, it's foreign to my identity to move on after having what I have. I can't imagine moving on with anyone else, marrying anyone else after having what I have. I think most people could. I just don't think that I could. And it's important that I made this video because now I've been able to say it out loud. And I think part of the reason I had to make this video and talk about this is it's my way of almost like a defense mechanism. If I'm already psychologically there in that moment, God forbid, in that moment, if it ever did come true, I'd be a little bit more prepared for it and have some direction on it so that I'd feel like I had a sense of control. I think that's why I needed to have this conversation with myself or anyone who's watching. I just can't imagine being someone who would remarry if I became a widow. It's too foreign of a concept.